person, or when we comes to the public, most of the people think like all the fishes are look same and they eat the same and sort of thing, blah blah blah. But these fishes are extremely diverse in their body shapes, in their mouths. I mean, the mouth morphology, and even their teeth is so much differentiated. And why? The question, uh, it is because of the particular environment that the fishes live. For example, you can see here the fishes who are living in the benthic zone, which is the bottom of these reefs, have usually have this sort of the barbels, what we call, and their mouths are more superior to catch the prey which falls on top of their head. But the species here, if you can see my cursor, you can see there's a zone called euphotic zone, which is a pelagic species, free swimming species in the water column. Usually has this terminal mouth, so they can easily get the food particles in front of their head region. So likewise, each of these body shapes like fusiform, anguilliform, each of these body forms, mouth parts, and their teeth really equip them for their ecosystem, and it is really, really important for the functioning of these fishes. So moving on, um, uh, before we talk about the diversity, we have to get some idea how this diversity begins, right? So these fishes, as I mentioned, you fish is a really, really umbrella term, like a really broad term. So all these fishes and their ancestors are from like different orders and different classes. So two superclasses that I have to mention, the Ostrictias and the Chondrichthyes, which is the Ostrictias means the bony fish, and the Chondrichthyes, which means their structures are made up of cartilages. It's pretty simple, and these are represented by the rays, sharks, and other organisms, while the Ostrictias is another, again divided into subclasses like Actinopterygii and Sarcopterygii. So I'll give you some information about this classification. So basically, the Actinopterygii is the subclass that all the fishes with the rays, soft rays in their fins, but the Sarcopterygii means the fishes with the muscular lobes, actually muscular lobes. So in simple terms, the Sarcopterygii, what we call the fishes, for example, the lungfishes, those are called the Sarcopterygian lineages. So these fishes are actually more closer to the other tetrapods, like other terrestrial animals, than the other Actinopterygians. So you see how diverse it is, right? And these Actinopterygians again have a really, really interesting what we call a infraclass called Teleostae. Teleostae means the modern bony fishes which have bony skeleton, and their fins are like made up of very soft rays. So at least 90% of the today's species belongs to the Stelios, modern bony fishes, and the others are primitive or either race sharks or these Chondrichthyes lineages. So enough of that. So now today's topic is about Sri Lanka's fish diversity, right? So in this case, I have termed this as a fantastic island. So why? So let me explain. So you can see Sri Lanka in middle of the Indian Ocean, and it's not a teeny island. Like it's the area is 65,000 some area like that. So it's not a very teeny island. It's more of a continental island located in between in the Indian Ocean. And specifically, you can see that in this picture, the red color region is called the tropical region, and we have other regions like subtropical, temperate, and polar regions. But tropical regions are especially very important because these regions host disproportionately very high diversity when compared to the other temperate zones. For example, these Amazons like neotropicals and the tropical continents like Sumatra and Sri Lanka, these and Madagascar, of course, these islands boast much of endemic species, and their diversity is really high. And also Sri Lanka is also consists of these peneplains, which is the elevation ranges, and you can see the first peneplain, second peneplain, third peneplain. The central highlands is much more upland than the first the lowland area. So Sri Lanka has very diverse climate gradients and environmental gradients. So these gradients and these provide new niche dimensions. I hope you know the term niche, environmental niche, which we call. It's about the environmental heterogeneity, and species occupy a certain space in this environmental spectrum. So in Sri Lanka, it's really diverse. So it's a fantastic island. And um, in early 2000s, this paper was published in the Nature, demarcating the biodiversity hotspots. And Sri Lanka is, of course, a biodiversity hotspot along with Western Ghats of India. So it contains so much of endemism, and also there's another negative effect, which is uh, uh, the high threat intensity that it poses. So, um, before we talk into the Sri Lankan biodiversity context, we have to get some idea about how the animals get here. So we have, sorry, actually, sorry for the disturbance. There was a electricity shortage right now, so I'm sorry for that. Um, Okay. So where the species come from and how the species get here, it's a really interesting question before we talk into the diversity, like the facts. So we know that about 600 million years ago, there was the singular landmass called the Gondwanan and Eurasia. So this Sri Lanka belongs to this Gondwanan landmass, and some of the biogeographic affinities come from this Gondwanan structure. For example, um, in the fishes, for example, the Aplocylus genus, which is the freshwater killifish genus, is a good example. And also, there's another genus called cichlids. Sri Lankan cichlids is also a very good example for such Gondwanan biogeographic geographic origins. And again, during the Oligocenes, like 33 million years ago, all these Indian southern part and Sri Lanka was connected through this land bridge, and species come to the Sri Lanka, and species again went to the Indian mainland. So this sort of things was happening. So this is how the species got here, right? Okay. Now, how the species, like what is actually the diversity? That's a really interesting question before we try to talk about the diversity, right? So most of the cases that I see, the people used to describe diversity. It's actually about this one pillar of true diversity, which is the species diversity, right? And but the diversity is consists of three main pillars: the species diversity, the ecosystem diversity, and the genetic diversity. So in this picture you can see, you can see, even though these are fishes, like there's higher species diversity. Some are very large, some are very tiny, and each and every individual does a very unique role in the ecosystem. So this species diversity is something like this. And again, I have put some examples from Sri Lankan context. These fishes are from actually Sri Lanka. I'll get into their identity and their sort of facts in at the upcoming slides. So this ecosystem diversity is something the fishes live in these ecosystems, and the fresh waters, we have brackish water estuaries, and also the reef ecosystem. So as the today's topic, so these are like ecosystem diversity which in this island, it's really important, like um, compares to the other island nations. And also, very interesting thing is the genetic diversity like in the species. Um, this is another pile that we have to make sure to conserve for the future generations, because even in the even in a single species, there might be different varieties, there might be different unique genetical lineages. Conservation means conservation of these lineages as well. So this is about the genetic diversity. Okay, so I think I have finished the first part of my crash course about what is diversity and what is this island and what sort of things are going on here. And I hope up to now I have explained this in a brief manner. So if anyone has any question, just raise your hand or like put in the message. Okay. So let's get into the today's business, which is about streams to reefs. So the first group that I chose is Sri Lankan freshwater fishes because I like freshwater fishes very much, and most of my ongoing research about the ecology and stuff is more about this freshwater fish and their communities. Yeah. So a total of 127 species of freshwaters approximately inhabit Sri Lankan waters, including the exotics as well. So nowadays, there's tons of new exotic species which we call the Dadurunaya, what we call the Channa species, and alligator gas as well. So all these together, there might be a total of like approximately 135 species maybe. And but the really important thing is the natives. So there are 97 native species inhabiting Sri Lankan freshwaters, and that amount is really high when we compare to the area of the island and the number of species when it compares to the other land masses. So this is really high. And again, another interesting thing is like almost two-thirds of 61 are being endemics to this island. And again, another thing, out of these 61 endemics, again, 10 to 12 species are considered as range restricted or microendemic or point endemic species. So this is really important. So you can see some nice photographs of some of freshwater fishes inhabiting Sri Lanka. So yeah, 88% of endemics are also being threatened with extinction. And again, another good point is like I show you Sri Lankan map, right? In that map, I have demarcated a region which is the wet zone, which is the southwestern ecological zones, basically falls on, and this region disproportionately boost higher species endemism in this region, particularly because of the unique climate, which can be found nowhere in other tropical regions. And yeah, so because of this rainforest and this unique climate conditions, these species have accumulated into this section. So remember that the southwestern region is very important for the biodiversity conservation when we're talking about the freshwater fishes. And since it's about the diversity, I have to show you some of the underwater footages of some habitats. You can see here in the left corner, there are another really interesting species. If you can see my cursor, you can see a small, what we call a Danio species. I can't remember the single term, unfortunately. It is called the Patirana Salea, actually. Salea. The term is Salea. The Danios are Salea. So you can see some southwestern range restricted endemic over here. And you can see Rasbora, which is in Sinhala we call Dandia species. And again, in the bottom, you can see a Cystomus Peradeniya, a Heathamassa in Sinhala. And again, there's some Tokudri, which we call Lehella species as well, so on, so on. So this is how the underwater world looks like beneath the stream flows and stream surface. So this is what it looked like, basically. Um, so moving on to the different families, I have to make sure that to pass this very quickly. So these are some of the major dominant groups in Sri Lanka, which is the Cypriniforms and the family Cyprinidae. So this includes all the carp species from the biggest ones like Tokudri, the Lehella, to the other species like Cystomus serrana, the Muspethia species, and to the smallest barbs like Petia ravel, Petia nigrofasciata, Petia bandula. Have you heard of Bandula Petia? Of course, you have heard of Bandula Petia over the news or these advertisements or all this. So these all belongs to this certain family, the Cyprinidae, and this is the major abundant group in Sri Lankan waters. And again, I have shown you some native cichlid species. I'm really sorry that since this is from streams to reefs, I cannot show you all the species, but I have selected some, I think, beautiful species to show how diverse is it underwater. So I'm really sorry I can't show you all the species in this presentation alone. So these are the native cichlid species in Sinhala. These are basically the tilapia species, but native to Sri Lanka and India. So these are again the gouramis of Sri Lankan waters. You can see Pulutta, the Capano species, Malpulutta cretaceae, and Belontia. These all are gourami species. And one thing I have to mention, like the Belontia, it have a origin story connects to these Gondwanan land masses, as I mentioned earlier. And I can see that in the participants there was Tharushiaka as well. So Tharushiaka certainly worked on this Malpuruta species conservation program for this species. And again, these are family Channidae, which is a very a family that is very popular these days because of the Dadruoya incident with that Channa species. So these are native Channa species, which we call Kanayas, Lulas, and Gangara. These species are this family Channidae, and these are native to Sri Lanka. And Channa orientalis, the right, yeah, the top right photograph is this species is an endemic to the Sri Lanka. So these are some of the lowered species you can find in the benthic, the bottom layer of Sri Lankan freshwater streams and these ecosystems. See, in Sinhala, we call this ahiravas, but in certain places, people also call this puak barilla as well. But the ahirava is a common term. But if you use a snorkel and just peep into these waters, you can see a huge like very beautiful world out there, and these guys will be sticking in the bottom, and you can like see these species actually, because these are really common, not the Paracatha species, but the Lepada cepalictis thermalis. It's a very common species you can see everywhere. And I have to mention, like, I told you that, guys, that there are some species which have very limited ranges and range restricted endemics. So these two species are described very recently, but these are range restricted species. These are confined to the Galloya catchment headwaters, which is the Galloya Laubuka Hema, and Rasbora adisi, the Galloya Rasbora species. So these are narrow range or this uh, range restricted endemics, of course. So speaking of the freshwaters, like we have begin a paper series addressing some critical ecological questions about these fishes. And as the first step, our team have published a paper on the ecological structure and how these fishes being structured by the environmental gradients recently. So in this paper, we identify that the species distribution is really unique, that they facilitate each other by not crossing their own paths. Like they have divided their like homes and their specific niche and the food partitioning. It's remarkable, and it's really advanced to see these co-evolved communities, because You can't imagine that sort of thing. Like it's really interesting to see these kind of interactions in between species in the freshwater fishes. And I have put some fun fact. In the Sri Lankan freshwaters, the smallest freshwater fish that you can find is, as far as I know, this Horadandia tucorali species, which is a very small, like maximum you can find it like 3 centimeters. This species can be found in the southwestern some parts, specifically in Bentara regions. And the biggest freshwater fish that you can find in Sri Lanka is none other than the biggest catfish, Walago Atu, which is the Walea. Records say that they can even grow up to the 2 meter size as well. So I have compiled all that stuff into the freshwater chapter, but we are moving towards the brackish water fishes. So, well, these brackish water fishes, aren't they the same as the freshwaters, but just move here and there? No, no. Actually, in the brackish water ecosystems, like when the salt water, the salt water and the fresh waters mix, and in the ecosystems such as the estuaries, and the mangrove habitats, basically you can find very unique species there. So you can see some photographs, right? The puffer fish and the spotted scat and the silver mooney. So these species are like especially the chanos is a really important fish for the livelihoods of the people. There are different other species as well. I have to mention like the Mugil cephalics. We call this Godea species in Sinhala Godea. Yeah. So these species, as you can see, really, really colorful than sometimes than freshwater fishes. But in freshwater fishes as well, you can see some colors like red, black. These are blend with their territorial displays and their mate selection sort of thing. So these fishes need colors, okay? But some of these brackish water fishes have different colors than in the freshwaters because they have adapted into these certain ecosystems, right? So they have to blend in with the ecosystem, their environment. Otherwise, there will be fatal predatory sort of things. Otherwise, so they have to camouflage into their environment. So these are really colorful as well. Yeah. Speaking of mangroves and estuaries, you cannot miss this fish. So this is a really beautiful fish to watch, which is the archerfish, the Dimitta in Sinhala. Toxotas is the genus name, and there are a number of species, but in Sri Lanka there's only one species. So one particular ability makes this fish a mangrove specialist. What is it? So you can see the photographs, and this fish has this particular ability to split water volume and hit their target very accurately and precisely. And so they can drop their insects or whatever the prey item that they locked and certainly falls into the water. So that's the end of that prey item. So this is a highly like very predatory fish, but very interesting to watch because of this unique ability. It makes it a mangrove specialist species. Again, speaking of these estuaries and this sort of brackish water habitat, we have to consider about unique types of fishes which use these brackish waters not to live to a very long time, but to just to pass. Like some species which we call the diadromous migration. Some species are anadromous that migrates from saltwater to the freshwater in order to spawn. In Sri Lankan scenario, the milk puffer is a certain species, and some really popular species like the true eel species like Angula bicolor, Angula bengalensis. So these species are anadromous, completely opposite to that, which means they live in the fresh waters, but they have to migrate to the salt water to the reproduce. So this is a really interesting group that eels that I am currently developing a project. So So these sort of migrations being happening. So another thing, that there's another certain group called amphidromus, which is the species which move between saltwater habitats and the freshwater habitats, but not just for breeding, but for like food availability, or there's no certain reason. Mainly the food availability, like the goby species are amphidromus, some goby species, yeah. So this is the Calodon bagrota. This is the milk puffer, and the angular bicolor species, which are diadroma species, can be found in brackish waters, but they do not live there like fully their life there. They just cross this certain ecosystem. So I'm moving really fast, and I hope to explain more, but with the limited time, I know the audience may get or might be boring, so I have to make sure that this moves really quickly and smoothly. So, moving into the other sort of ecosystem that I'm very much interested, which is the reef profiles of Sri Lanka and the fish communities living in the reefs. So, one thing that the members can see these ecosystems and notice one thing really different from the freshwater fishes, right? What is it? Yeah, it's related to their colors, right? You can see these fishes are much more bright, much more colorful, and some of the juveniles, so that they have this ontogenetic. Ontogenetic means like when they are juveniles, they have a unique appearance, the colors and stuff. But they when they grow, their color and their appearance completely different. So what we call it the ontogenetic shift. So in these ecosystems, we can find a lot of such ontogenic appearance shifts in colors, and specifically the colors. So the reason is, um, as you can see in the reef ecosystems, these reef ecosystems are composed of these corals and the other substrates. Like really, these coral polyps are different colors, and they have to the fish have to blend in to this environment, otherwise they cannot survive for a long time, because they would be predators roaming in the reefs. So they have to be very careful. So in that case, these fishes, over the time, that they have developed certain colors which can show their dominance. Sometimes the red color shows the dominance, and the black color shows their sexual maturity and stuff. So these colors also shows different meanings. But so this is like, if you look at into the streams, the reefs, you can find these lovely ecosystems out there. It's like the Atlantis. Yeah. So, speaking of reef fishes, I have selected some of the widely distributed fishes, reef fishes you can find in Sri Lankan waters. So basically, my fieldwork is focused on the south coastal belt. So whenever you take a dive, or whenever you take some snorkeling session, you can see this pretty fish out there. The line surgeon, the Acanthara species, you cannot miss, because that much it is widespread and very common. And you can't miss the Bengal surgeon. The species is more like in freshwaters. We have this tilapia species, right? If you spot a certain species which look like a tilapia species in these reef systems, it's probably this Bengal surgeon or the Indo-Pacific surgeon, yeah, fish. And there's another very interesting group that I like to mention few facts. The family is Caridae, which include which we commonly called as the parrotfishes. These parrotfishes are extremely important for the reef ecosystems, because they feed on these little polyps, and when they digest and they pass sand, and they are like dropping these polyps as well. So this helps to regenerate the reefs, and these parrotfishes are basically a lifesaver of this reef. So it is very important, if you are targeting on reef conservation, to target very keystone species like these parrotfish species, which is very, very functional in these reef ecosystems. And again, there's the group called the snappers, very common in Sri Lankan waters, and this Lutjanidae is the genus, sorry, the family of this these snappers. And again, you can see they are also very colorful. And uh, there's again a group called the butterfly fishes, and which is again have different species, but I just choose few to show you how this the body shapes and the color patterns vary. And these are only the groups. Actually, there are a number of species in this reef ecosystem. So as per the last IUCN Red List assessment in 2012, it mentioned like approximately about 1,800 species might inhabit Sri Lankan oceans, not the reef species alone, but altogether there might be 1,800 or approximate number like that. But as you can see, there's a huge number of species, and each of these species play a very unique role in these systems. And again, some of the common fishes you can find in Sri Lankan reef ecosystems is the damsel fish, which is very territorial. If you look at into their displays and their behaviors, they are always fighting together to defend their territories with their life. So these damsel fishes you can find in sandy shores and these rocky sort of reef areas. And another really interesting group is the moray eels. Some of the predatory eel species lives in these reef ecosystems. They are really colorful and also really deadly if you like their teeth is arranged into the opposite direction plate. So if once this moray eel captured a fish, that means the end of that certain fish, because you cannot unlock that because the teeth itself is a locker. So these moray eels are really important for balancing the herbivores and balancing these ecosystems. So these predators play a huge role in this reef. And speaking of which, of predators, we have to mention the reef sharks as well. Some of the common reef sharks in Sri Lanka belongs to this Karchana hynus genus, which is the requiem sharks, and in Sinhala, I think it's called the Kirimora species. Yeah, there are different species which people call Kirimora, but Carchanohymus sora, Carchanohymus melanopterus, which is the black tip reef shark, which is a very common reef shark in Sri Lankan waters. And fortunately, if you go into a dive, you could see the bamboo shark. So these sharks are, again, these sharks are very diverse. They have very different diets. Some sharks, even the whale shark, right? The biggest fish on this world is the whale shark. So this whale shark isn't eating this meat. Oh, it's not a carnivore actually. It's a planktonivore species which depends on this phytoplanktons. And these sharks also have different niche adaptability, and their mechanisms are really different. But you can find some predatory black sharks like reef tip sharks and the other species as well. So this is all about the sharks. So one fact in Sri Lanka, it is known to have about 62 confirmed species as per Mr. Rex D. Silva's latest report. So there must be around 62 species, but there are the unconfirmed records as well. So speaking of sharks, also there's a really good diversity in the island. So I have to mention the biotic interactions in these reef ecosystems very briefly. So you can see the fishes are not dumb actually. Fishes not dumb, they are really intelligent, and they have evolved certain mechanisms to help each other and they find their food and the other resources very effectively without spending much energy on that actually, because living in these fresh waters or either brackish waters or either reef ecosystems, if you are the species to survive, you need to conserve your energy, and you have to utilize this energy to maximize the output. So some species like clownfish are very clever, that they have found an interesting relationship with the sea anemone, which we call a symbiotic relationship, that it helps these clownfishes to get protected from other predators, while this helps to the both ways. So these are some of really interesting biotic interactions you can see in the reef ecosystems. Another interaction in between this cleaning wrasse. This species uh, do not spend much energy on just searching fish, but instead they are the cleaning staff in the reef ecosystems. They are cleaning staff actually. They stick into a certain larger fish or whatever fish, and just feed on the parasites and other small other planktons like so. Uh, on the other hand, the bigger fish gets benefit from getting rid of these parasites and stuff. On the other hand, this the cleaner wrasse get benefit from having the food. So as you can see, the fish are not obviously dumb, but they have developed certain methods and mechanisms and biotic interactions which could survive in these crucial reef ecosystems. Okay, I have completed the reef ecosystems very briefly and moving towards the other marine fishes. And I think the time is really ticking, so I have to make a little bit fast. So, as apart from the reefs, there's another section called the open ocean, which usually these assemblages do not reach the bottom, but live entirely in this water column. So in this species, you can see they are pelagic, right? They are pelagic means usually they are like free swimming and finding their food items in these water columns. So one of two predatory fishes are really important in Sri Lanka. The skipjack tuna, the Katswanus pelamis species, and the marlin species. I haven't included the scientific names because in the marlin species, it's a really diverse species, and genera, there are different genera of these marine species. So basically, so these species live in these water columns, and they are predatory fishes, and they move very fast. This especially, this is a really classical example. This Casuonus pelamis species is a tuna species which belongs to the family Tunidae, and there are other species like Auxeros tassardis and other species. These are what we call baleas and Kelawala species. So these are really predatory species and can move very fast because they are predators. And their body form, as you can see, their body is very, very streamlined, very fusiform. It's a classic example for the fusiform body. It helped with this species to swim really fast um, through this massive currents. And again, I have to mention the ichthyomega in Sri Lankan waters. Sri Lanka hosts this whale shark, actually, the biggest fish in the world. The Rincon typus is this species name, and we have the giant manta rays, the mobula species. And unfortunately, Sri Lanka is one of the major manta killing destination as well. I'll get into that point. So these are ichthyomega. These are very, very large species, but you can find it in Sri Lanka. So see how diverse the island is. Again, a quick note, there are other fish communities like find in the whale carcasses, like what we call whale fall communities. Okay, so when some sort of a whale die, you can the whales getting into the bottom, and then the scavengers feast on this carcass. So in this carcass there are different communities, and the whale fall communities also host some scavenging species. I just wanted to show you these sort of communities exist. And we are getting into the last section actually. And again, I'm really sorry for this current shortage which I'm facing right now. And speaking of threats and conservation, I have included some like very common things like habitat destruction, pollution, overfishing is a problem for these fish. Like as I mentioned, the mobulas and these giant sharks and these manta rays are not being protected. These are being affected due to the overfishing that I have to mention. I recently read a paper from the Blue Resource Trust (BRT) working on this the manta rays and devil rays, and it says that Sri Lankan coast are the deathbed for these magnificent creatures because of lack of, especially the awareness actually, the regulation enforcement. And speaking of other freshwater threats, we have invasive species. I don't have to mention it over and over again, but some people like release intentionally this species into Sri Lankan waters. For example, this Dadrunaya incident or the clown knife fish incident. And even the British in the colonial region, I have to mention, the first invasive species now considered is the rainbow trout species. uh, the mic is rainbow trout species, which is brought by the British and now being distributed in the Horton Plains. But you can't find any native freshwater fishes there, but only these rainbow trout. So it's the first invasive species. Other than that, we have these sailfin catfishes, like, and these the catfishes, basically the Carius bacharas, this species, and even the guppies. So, and some of tilapia species like Oreochromis niloticus and Oreochromis mozambicus, one of the within the 100 worst alien species you can find in Sri Lanka very easily. And even recently, when I did surveys in the Colombo wetlands, I unfortunately found this the new distributed cichlids like Mayan cichlid and the jaguar cichlid. So this could pose a really harmful effect in future. And of course, we cannot ignore the effects of climate change. We know, now scientists call this is the Anthropocene, which we live in, changing climate. So this could affect these fishes because their breeding cycles and their whole physiology, like the traits that fishes are resilient to sort of conditions, could be changed with this climate change. So it is a really bad effect of this climate change. And again, speaking of threats, hydrological alterations which could disrupt these migratory routes. So that's why I mentioned this diadromous and catadromous, anadromous migrations because of this point actually. So some hydrological establishments like establishing dams, it disrupts whole the stream flow. So the species which are catadromous, anadromous can't move through these dams, but you have to use some sort of techniques to preserve the species, right? So we'll get into these facts in the next slide. So this is a real photographs from Sri Lankan coast. This is, you can see the size net, right? The size is really small, and there's a standard size, and you can see even the juveniles are being captured to these nets. So this is not really sustainable fisheries actually, because you caught the juveniles as well, so you cannot get much harvest the other day because you caught the juveniles already. Um, and speaking of fresh waters and these threats, this is a really good, unfortunately good example for the drastic decline of freshwater fish species. There's a one eel species. When you're reading P.P. Dharanigala's, Dr. Dharanigala's records and later records like Ranan Senanayaka's in 1980s, you could even find this particular eel species called Batacollathelia, the Macrodonus pentathalamus species, even in the ditches close to the Colombo ditches, means the urban. This is a really common species back in the 1980s, but um, after 40 years of time, 4 decades, there was no any single records except one, two. And recently in 2015, our society survey caught one specimen from Hangmal area, and recently my senior colleague Hiran Hathurusinghe's work showed like another two specimens from this Polonnaruwa region. So you see, apart from these records, you cannot find any records of this species. So the scientists believe this could be potentially, possibly extinct species for a while before finding these particular specimens. So the reason that the scientists assume like the drastical habitat transformation from the swarms and marshes into the agroecosystems like the paddy fields. So the agrochemicals must maybe have an effect on this species distribution. So we do not know for sure, but we can say that there's a drastic decline because of this transformation. And for the conservation, the last part of my session, for the conservation, we can use different mechanisms which we can classify basically the ex-situ and in-situ conservation initiatives. Basically, the in-situ means you protect the species within the ecosystem itself, which the species belong. Ex-situ means you take out the species and develop certain conservation mechanisms out of that out of this native ecosystem. For example, the captive breeding initiatives from the zoological gardens, and these sort of captive breeding studies are like these are executive conservation initiatives. But it's really important to work on in situ conservation actions as well. So sorry. So one of the major thing is habitat protection and enrichment. You can't like it's really hard to make these ecosystems again to the condition that they were for million years after destroying these ecosystems in a brink of time. So in that case, habitat protection, like the conservation of these ecosystems is really important for the conservation of other species. For this sort of things, you can use keystone species like in the freshwaters. These keystone species, you need to select these species and develop certain mechanisms. And exotic species management is another really interesting and thing. Like our team being discussing this issue for years, and showing from the statistics, and fortunately uh, we saw that the act was there by the government to prohibit this the breeding and facilitating this highly carnivore species like the piranha species and sort of stuff. This is really important, and again, the invasive species, control invasive species, it is really hard to control it after it is spread widely. But if you could work before that to stop the getting into this environment, so that is the crucial step that we have to take. So otherwise you cannot fully clear invasive species or exotic species once they have established natural populations in these ecosystems. And again, it could be really harmful to remove these alien invasive species at once out of this environment, because other native species might have adapted to this new setting. So if you remove this invasive species, mentioning it's an invasive species or exotic species, so this could pose again an indirect effect to this native species which have already been adapted. So these conservation initiatives must be on evidence and the proper studies. So otherwise, it could be really harmful, but to actually to this species. So for the hydrological dams, we show that the fish ladder concept is a good solution, and you have to establish such sort of establishments to facilitate these migrations. And again, the executive breeding pods in the zoos and captive breeding initiatives is really important for the conservation of these species. And one good example of the successful story is about the bandula barb, the Petia bandula, as I assume that all of you are very familiar, because in the radios, in the television, always Petia bandula conservation stuff. So that really helps actually, because now everyone knows about this fish, but this is a really point endemic fish you can only find in Galapitamada area in Kagalla, specifically in Minimaru Colonia. Yeah, it's what it's called. Um, so this species was really the population was declined to the 200 and 300 individuals, and there was a massive effort of the Sri Lankan authorities to boost this population and to create awareness. Actually, the creating awareness. So if you visit this species, the people know that this species belong to them, and they must protect this species because this is our fish. They talk like that. So even if you're a scientist, you're going to collect some data about these fishes, you could not do this without a proper permit, because the villagers won't allow you. It's really fortunate to see such sort of behavior from the public, encouragement and enthusiasm to protect this species, and we have to learn from these successful stories in order to develop future projects actually. But the results from that study, the boosted populations, like they have captive bred, and their populations being translocated to another refugial site, and the population was boosted. So one of critical major thing that we learn from this story is creating awareness. So that's a certain thing that we do right now, creating awareness about these scenarios. So another conservation initiative from our group is focused on this the lord species, which is restricted to the headwaters of this Suryakanda area, the Eastern Sinharaja. So this is some sort of a similar study, but we have done an extensive theoretical and ecological studies on this to design specifically what sort of mechanism that it need to boost this ecology. And we have come up with certain new initiatives and be out to the public very soon. But this is I just use this one structure that we come up with, which we call the leaf litter bay. So what happened is, like, we realized that the juveniles are significantly associated with the leaf litter than the adults, and these leaf litter are the breeding grounds of these lodges. And to increase the leaf litter and to increase this breeding sites and nursery sites, we have come up with this leaf litter bay from using these discarded barrels, and we have put this leaf litter into that and put a mesh, and we have the video evidence that the fish actually use this very actively. So we can say that it's some sort of successful, and we are deploying several these sort of structures along the margins without the areas without this riparian vegetation. So if you have this riparian vegetation, the riparian vegetation means there's stream marginal trees, so they ultimately help to accumulate the leaf litter. But unfortunately, some sites in the margins of these tea estates don't have it, so we developed this method to boost the leaf litter accumulation. And I promise you guys, this is the last few three slides. So and this is one of a major initiative to conserve the marine species, marine fishes, and marine systems, demarcating MPS, marine protected areas, and this was initiated by WNPS with Dr. Malik Fernando and his team. So this is really a good initiative for and good milestone for Sri Lanka to step into the conservation of this magnificent, diverse world of fishes and marine species. And again, recently our team also found a new population of rare seahorse species from the southern coast, which we work quite often. So, and we have done this and people are really interested to know this lesser known taxa. And this is again uh, really important to document the species that you have. So if you do not know what species inhabit your land, what species are when to like where to find these species, you could not develop like effective conservation mechanisms. For example, like we had a meeting with IUCN specialist group, freshwater fishes, and this seahorse group actually. And one of our objective was to develop a certain project to these freshwater pipe fishes, which I'm really interesting, and we are currently working on. And the first thing that the IUCN specialist group told me that with what you are going to develop first, you have to we are developing our study, but they emphasize that the study should be done first to determine what sort of things going on. So I'm repeating the same thing again and again to say you like the baseline studies, baseline documentation is really, really, really important for the conservation, and it's the first step for the conservation initiatives. And I hope within the limited time, I don't know how much I have taken your time, but I think I have covered some broad aspect into a very, very small time period, but really interesting facts. I hope you gain some sort of understanding. And I need to thank my colleagues and my supervisors, and my institutions, University of Peradeniya, University of Ruhuna, Fisheries and Marine Science faculty, and my society, the Wildlife Conservation Society Galle, which I'm currently working on, and we are initiating different projects right now on freshwater fishes, basically. So thank you all colleagues of mine who supported our work. And the photo credits, some of the photos that I used, the credits that I mentioned here. Thank you all, the supporters. And finally, thank you so much for your attention. And I hope there are some questions, and I'm happy to answer if I know that. Thank you so much. I'm not sure. Am I audible?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, okay. Okay.
Actually, thank you very much, Mr. Janamina, for that insightful and inspiring session. Um Moving on, next slide.